as I stated, Mr. Popowitz has received complaints about truck traffic on that road. The road does appear to qualify for restrictions to through truck traffic based upon the fact that there are other alternatives available for truck traffic to use instead of using Route 610. Namely, they can take Route 17 to New Post and then travel down Route 2 towards Bowling Green, or use the reverse route when they're going east on Route 17. So there is an alternative truck route available. Prior to petitioning VDOT and the Commonwealth Transportation Board, which has the ultimate decision, the board must hold a public hearing and adopt a resolution requesting the restriction on through trucks on State Route 610, which is consistent with one that the board did several years ago on Dry Bridge Road, if you'll remember. We have prepared a resolution which is included in your packet, and with that I'll answer any questions that the board may have.
Any questions of Mr. Fincham before we proceed with the public hearing?
No, just a statement. Certainly appreciate the passage of this because I think it's needed. I know that several citizens over there have almost had accidents and other things because of the large truck traffic, and it doesn't add that much to the, I think less than 2 miles to the trip for them to head down a safer route. So.
Okay.
Just one anecdote story. Bobby and I one night were heading to Port Royal together. He went down Route 2 to 17 and I cut across Petmeyer Hill. He actually beat me to Port Royal and I was ahead of him. So it really isn't any longer because I was on the cell phone with him asking him where he was, and he'd passed Petmeyer Hill and I was only 2/3 of the way down it. So it really doesn't add, I think it probably, they would add time to their, or subtract time from their trip not using the road.
Yeah, that's a great word. I forgot about that.
Okay. All right, we'll go ahead and hold the public hearing. At this time, if there are any, we now open the public hearing for the proposed restrictions of through truck traffic on State Route 610, Peppermint Hill Road. Any citizens who would like to address the board on this public hearing? Any citizens who would like to address the board on this public hearing? Are there citizens who would like to address the board?
I believe we have something.
Could we just please state your name and voting district?
Catherine Laughlin, and I'm the Port Royal District. And I want to say good evening to Mr. Chairman and to the members of the board, and I want to thank you for the opportunity to be able to present this proposal. And the gentleman before me expressed it very well. We're very concerned about the large trucks being on that road, and we would like to restrict the traffic of those large trucks there. I thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any other citizens who would like to address the board on this public hearing? Are there other citizens who would like to address the board on this public hearing? Are there any other citizens who would like to address the board on this public hearing? Seeing none, we'll declare the public hearing closed. Mr. Popowitz, how would you like to dispose of this matter?
I'd like to make a motion that we ask and petition the VDOT board as outlined in the resolution presented to us tonight.
Second. All right, motion made and probably second that we approve the resolution supporting this restriction. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, same. All right, motion carried.
Mr. Roselle has asked me to conduct the next public hearing, which is agenda item 6, which is the disposition of property owned by the Caroline County Board of Supervisors, tax map 102-7A1A, which is the Dawn Library site. Mr. Roselle is one of 4 owners of land that donated land to the county, so he has recused himself, which I hope is the right word. Mr. Fincham.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, your last public hearing tonight is, as you stated, on the disposition of publicly owned property. which is property for the Dawn Library. The subject tax parcel is 102-7-A1A. The Board of Supervisors accepted a gift of 1 acre of land for the future Dawn Library in December of 2007, which was recorded in Deed Book 980, page 32, which is a copy of which is included in your staff report. The subject property is located just west of State Routes 2 and 301, approximately a quarter of a mile north of the Route 30-301 intersection in Reedy Church District. During the site and building plan preparation, it was determined that the physical location of the library needed to be shifted due to environmental constraints that were identified on the property. A revised site plan was prepared and is awaiting approval, which requires a boundary line adjustment of the 1 acre parcel currently owned by the Board of Supervisors with the adjoining property owner. A plat and deed have been prepared to facilitate the boundary adjustment in order to allow the site plan to be approved and the project to go forward. However, the Board of Supervisors must hold a public hearing in accordance with sections 15.2-1800 of the Code of Virginia as amended prior to finalizing the boundary line adjustment and to allow the project to go forward. With that, I'll answer any questions that the board may have.
Board members at this time have any questions of Mr. Fincham regarding the matter before you?
Yes.
Mr. Popowitz.
Is there any additional cost associated with this as far as the site plan and all that?
No, sir, not to my knowledge.
Okay.
The library, the project has been bid, and I don't believe, I mean, that bid is based upon the site plan, which is awaiting approval.
Okay. Thank you.
Is that it, Ms. Popowitz? Ms. Akers? Mr. Seeley has a question.
Mr. Finch, I have probably two. The old site had an easement down off of Route 2 straight into the property. Now the easement is down actually, which looks like a utility right-of-way. I guess the first question is there any, what is the proper, I don't know what the proper word is, for our ingress and egress through a right-of-way that's actually occupied by a utility?
It basically would be a joint easement. It's an ingress-egress easement for the construction of the driveway into the library site itself. Yes, there is a utility easement. There's an overhead power line there. But that, while it's within the boundaries of the ingress-egress easement, does not conflict with the driveway entrance for the library.
And one other question, and I guess I'll have to ask our county attorney the same. One of the questions I keep getting is, we have an easement, not a right-of-way. And should we be getting a right-of-way to this property rather than an easement? Because we have to construct some sort of entrance to the site that the county is going to actually provide, and then all we have is an easement to that, and that we've actually developed the entrance.
I think that's all that's required is the ingress-egress easement. I mean, that's the right that authorizes the entrance into the property.
So the driveway or anything that we construct, or the entranceway, does that belong to the county when it's complete? Or does that convey to the land?
That's the real difference.
Well, I mean, it's the easement, it's the right of easement. I mean, it's not owned in fee simple. I mean, as far as owning it, I mean, we have the ownership, or we have the right over the easement, which runs with the land.
But if we develop the entranceway, we don't own it.
Well, I guess I'm getting caught up on owning it. The owning of the improvement, or the
owning of the improvement, is the improvement the county's, or is it the landowners at that point?
It's mutual.
I'm trying to think of what the plat looks like. I haven't read it in front of me.
It's an ingress-egress easement which allows you access to and to construct the improvements necessary to access the library.
But any improvements that are made, let's say a right turn lane, you know, a de-acceleration lane into that, if we put that in.
That's probably going to belong to VDOT, because it's VDOT has a right-of-way on a road.
Yes.
Which means they basically own 25 feet or 50 feet from the center line of the road. That always belongs to VDOT.
That's correct.
If we get an easement is basically permission to use property basically forever.
Outside of the VDOT right-of-way.
Outside of the VDOT right-of-way.
Mhm.
They're totally different. I'm just trying to make the definition as much as I can without being a lawyer of right-of-way versus easement. In either case, any improvements to the easement are by nature the counties or whoever has that easement to use, because that's basically what an easement is. Now, who owns it is I don't know if it's a relative point or not, because.
Well, that's it. We would have the right with the easement to improve that property. And so we have the right to build the road, and then thereafter, whether, Mr. Thomas is absolutely right, whether it's the county or whether then it's dedicated to the state, and that's why, you know, so who owns the road, the improvement, the grantor would not. I can put it to you that way. They would not own the road. It would either be the county or the state, you know, whoever.
So is there ever any cost sharing on this improvement, or is it something the county does and then it's done?
This improvement is related to our use of that site for the library. If somebody else came in and developed, okay, and wanted, and it was proposed to use that egress easement for access, then we would go through the site plan process again and determine what, if any, additional improvements needed to be made, whether it then had to be upgraded to state standards, et cetera, et cetera. And at that time of development, those additional improvements would have to be constructed as a part of that future development.
But will the county be responsible for a portion of that improvement?
No. We are making the improvement necessary for our access to the library site. We are not responsible for any additional improvements for some other future development that would occur.
I'm just looking to make sure that Are we eligible to use the utility easement for any utilities that we put in?
The deeded egress easement also allows us, grants us an easement to install utilities within the right-of-way. And we will be installing sewer to this site as a part of the project. This site will connect to the Dawn sewer system, and it would be within the 50-foot egress easement to the site. It also allows utility installation.
Okay. Thank you. That's it for now.
Okay, and I have no questions for you at this time, Mr. Fincham. Just to restate and clarify, the Board of Supervisors was given free of charge an acre of land for the Dawn Library site. After evaluation, that acre of land, due to environmental concerns, wouldn't satisfy the library site requirements. So subsequently, we are doing a boundary adjustment. The county is returning the land it was given and doing a boundary adjustment for an equal amount of land. Similar?
Similar.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Fincham. At this point in time, we'll open public hearing. Is there anyone who would like to speak regarding this matter? Is there anyone who would like to speak regarding this matter? Is there anyone who would like to speak regarding this matter? Hearing none, we'll declare the public hearing to be closed. How does the board wish to dispose of this agenda item?
I have one other question.
Yes, Mr. Seeley, one other question?
Mr. Fincham, one other question.
Yes, sir.
If another entrance is developed to this property, and it's not on our easement, do we have access to that entrance, or are we limited to the entrance to the easement that we are currently granted?
The subject property is located within a highway corridor overlay district, which limits access points to the property. Don't know the full length of frontage from the intersection up to the next property line, but depending on how, and you're asking me to speculate, so I'm going to try to do that, but there
Let me
are
just
different
say that
answers.
It says there's 518 feet of road frontage on this, according to the plat that we have.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but
Okay.
The issue is the difference or the distance between the road easement and the next property line, right?
Right. It would depend upon where the access point was granted by VDOT, as well as our HCOD regulations. What I would suggest to you is that the old right-of-way location would not be suitable for a new right-of-way due to a combination of VDOT regulations and our HCOD regulations. So any future access would probably have to be shifted further north from the current intersection or the current access to the site.
Right. And I'm just trying to make sure that we understand what our entrance, ingress, and egress will be down the road. And I guess one other question for our attorney, will we get a title policy on this since it's in a bigger piece of property? Will that follow this, or are we not subject to that?
We will be getting a title policy. There's one currently in place on the original parcel, and so we're getting an endorsement on that parcel.
Okay.
So, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we approve this division of property owned by the Carrollton County Board of Supervisors, tax map 102-A-A1A.
Second.
Mr. Eggerson made the motion to dispose of the property tax map 1027A1A, seconded by Mr. Popowitz. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Motion carries.
Mr. Vice Chairman, I'm sorry, before you hand it back over to the chair,
Yes, ma'am.
can we also get just a resolution vacating the original easements that were granted onto the original parcel and accepting the easements on the new parcel, just to make sure that it's clear on the record also? And that would be by resolution.
So we are going to ask for a motion that
A resolution.
authorizes staff to develop a resolution, or you want us to make the
If you
resolution
just
right now?
would make a resolution, just a resolution that vacates the easements on the original plat and accepts the easements granted on the new plat.
New plat. Mr. Akers, would you like to make that same motion?
Absolutely, I'll make the motion as outlined by the attorney.
Mr. Popowitz, would you
Second.
like the second? Okay, we have another motion to create a resolution vacating the
Accept the
easements. All those in, or discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. That motion also carries. We have concluded agenda item number 6. I will pass the chair back to Mr. Rozell for agenda item number 8.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Mrs. Hatcher, are you going to come forward and review with us the first quarter budget report for fiscal year 2010-11?
Good evening, Chairman, members of the board, Mr. Ashcraft. Included in your packet is the first quarter report for fiscal year 2011. Based on the way the report is formatted, the total revenues are down slightly for the quarter compared to the same period last year. The current year revenues of $11,691,000 compared to $13,014,000 for last year. Total expenditures are also down for the first quarter. $18,296,000 compared to $19,895,000. General fund revenues are approximately the same as what they were last year. Local revenues, which are your tax revenues, are $201,000 higher than last year, but keep in mind 92,000 of this increase is due to the consolidating of E911 fund with the general fund. We've done some moving around on you, which y'all don't like, but had to do it. Our state revenues are $145,000 less than last year, but they're within where we're supposed to be on the budget. We already knew that the budget numbers were going to be down for state revenues. Part of this decrease is due to the comp board. The rest is due to the moving of or establishing a fire rescue grant fund and moving certain of those state revenues out of the general fund into the fire and rescue grant fund. I found out through Chief Lehman that there were certain funds that needed to be separated. They are restricted into use and cannot, if they're not used in a timely manner, cannot roll into the general fund balance. So we had to move them, establish a new fund. The decrease was offset also by the moving of state revenues that had been recorded in the E911 fund over into the general fund. Property tax collections, as noted by Ms. Kern, are higher than they were last year. Part of it's due to the collection efforts of the Treasurer's Office. Part of it's also due to the 50% assessment versus the 40% of prior year. Motor vehicle license recordation taxes continue to decrease, but that should in the spring increase, at least on motor vehicle license, due to the board action to change the amount of the new decals. Consumer utility taxes in total are slightly lower than this time last year. It looks different in your report in the fact that part of the consumer utility taxes were in the E911 fund prior year. They're now in the general fund. So you're not getting a true comparison on some of these numbers because of moving them around. Building related or planning and zoning type permits continue to decrease, but it should be noted that the actual building permits did increase a little bit this quarter compared to the last quarter. General fund expenditures are higher than last year. $197,000 of the increase is due to the combining of the 911 fund with the general fund. Other factors of the increase are the general reassessment costs, which we did not have at this time last year, and recording on time the debt issuance costs that we've had. Typically, we record those at the end of the year, and I'm trying to get them done when they occur. So you did have it in this quarter where it was in the final quarter last year. Most of your departments are at the 25% benchmark or lower. Social services expenditures are slightly higher than the 25%, while the CSA expenditures are slightly lower than 25%, but they're running right about where they're supposed to. Your tourism revenues are a little bit higher compared to last year, which is a direct result of the Boy Scout Jamboree. And your debt service payments are slightly higher this quarter than the same time last year. Part of that had to do with refundings. So there wasn't a huge increase, it was just a slight increase, but there was also a timing issue when the refunded amounts being paid. Capital projects only consist of those projects that are ongoing from previous years of which monies had been borrowed for. The revenues in the capital projects haven't been recorded because I haven't physically made the transfers to show them. but they are paid for. The only thing that hasn't been from a prior year project were the police cruisers that the board recently approved to be purchased. Revenues for Caroline Utilities actually show an increase, actual to actual, of 29% over what it was this time last year, due to the rate increases in user fees and the rate increases in availability fees. I realize that on your report, it shows that it's only 10% of collections, but you've got to keep in mind that I'll be coming back to amend the utilities budget. Currently, the utility budget has $3 million worth of projects that will be moved out into the utilities construction fund as part of the $20 million borrowing that you all just did. So you're comparing to a very high number compared to what you were comparing to last year. Actual revenues received, not counting that $3 million, puts us at about 18%, which is a little bit higher than the previous year. Expenses for utilities are slightly higher, but they are still below the 25% benchmark. If you have any questions, I'll be glad to do the best I can to answer them.
Questions of Fran, Ms. Popowitz? Mr. Akers?
We've gone over enough times. I don't have any questions. We've talked about them many times.
Okay, yeah, Mr. Seeley?
I heard that we're actually below, and I mean, we're actually below the average on most of the funds that we're looking at currently for the first quarter. I mean, the collections have been below what they were last year. Is that pretty correct?
No, sir. A lot of the collections are up. Some of them are lower. Some of them are cyclical. Some of them are a matter of timing of reimbursements. So, because we received certain things at a certain time last year does not guarantee we're going to receive the same thing at the same time this year. It's just a matter of timing on certain things such as grant funds, those things. A lot of our grant funds are reimbursement basis.
Okay.
Mr. Vice Chairman?
Just kind of a quick question, Mrs. Hatcher. The general fund revenue, I guess page 5 of, let me make sure it's page 5 on paper. Yes, page 5 on paper. The general fund revenue is actually at 12%, 12.5% collected,
Yes.
but we haven't had a tax payment yet this fiscal year. Our first tax payment is due December 5th or 6th, something like that.
There are other things in there other than just the tax revenues.
That's what I wanted you to tell me, okay.
Actually, your tax revenues year-to-date for the first quarter were $2 million compared to $1.8 million in the previous year at the same quarter.
Wait, that's counting late July payment or late June payments?
Anything that's collected in July 1 forward.
Okay. Okay, thank you. And there's more?
As I stated, the revenue from the Commonwealth is down a little bit. Your revenue from the federal government is up. It's based on grants. So, I mean, it's...
Someone that's there, okay. Well, what I was thinking was we'd gotten 12.5% already, and we really hadn't had a tax cycle yet of our 2. So I was gonna ask, is that really a good number right now? But what you're saying is there are other things that have gone into there, so that 12.5% that looks like it's really good is not necessarily really good, but it just might be good.
It's good. I mean, we're ahead of collections in the biggest portion of the taxes, which is awesome.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was trying to figure out. I mean, we got December and June where we really collect tax money, and we've already gotten 12% without that, so, okay.
I mean, just your property taxes alone, this year is 751,000 compared to 542,000 last year, so.
Okay, at this point in time. Do you see anything that's, the last thing, you see anything that's a real warning sign?
Not at this point.
Okay, thank you.
All right, any other questions? All right, thank you, Ms. Hatcher. We appreciate your report and the update on the first quarterly report. All right, next we have the new business of the first reading of proposed amendment of Chapter 92 Sewer and 112 Water of the Code of Caroline County. Mr. Shebel.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, the staff and the county attorney have prepared the proposed amendments of Chapter 92 for sewer and Chapter 112 for water to propose to raise the availability fees for water and sewer after discussion from the last board meeting. In the prepared document, some of the information is just to restate and or revalidate. That's why it's such a lengthy document due to the changes we made last time. Overall, the recommendations would be to raise the availability fee and to extend for existing residents to maintain the $2,800 that are currently for existing homes only to December 31st of 2011. I believe Ms. Hall's handing out an attachment basically to compare the various utility systems within Virginia to give us an idea where other utilities are. We are definitely in the top 95% with the proposed increases of both water and sewer. In the comparison, trying to find, I can find many utilities throughout the state of Virginia that are lower than us, and trying to compare with like-sized utilities the best that we could, as well as showing the surrounding utilities around us. I did include Fairfax County in there just because it's such a large utility, you wouldn't expect their availability fee to be as high as it is. But so that one really shocked me for being a large utility. Most of your larger utilities are able to expend their cost out and being able to see where they're at. Also, one of the things that we've done is, we pretty much kept our availability fees the same cost for water and sewer. And we're getting to a point now where trying to justify where we're at on our availability fees if we get asked and keep raising them in equal amounts gets harder for us to justify. So on the last page, page 3, what I've done is taking our existing borrowings and worked with Ms. Hatcher and broke them down into our water debt and wastewater debt. As you see, 32% of our debt is water related, 68% of our debt is wastewater. Now this does include the new borrowing that was done for the wastewater treatment plant upgrade, as well as the Route 652 water line. So if we were to take the current increase that the board had suggested to bring forward, that would be $6,560 for the water or $13,940 for sewer. Our current availability fee is $8,000 and $8,500, and the recommendation would be to raise the water $5,000 to make it $8,500, and to raise the wastewater $3,500 to make that $12,000. Same amount, we've just spread it out where our debt is in this comparison. This is the first reading and is available for any discussions, changes to possibly bring back for a second reading for the board and a public hearing. Be glad to answer any questions.
Okay, for the first reading, board members have questions of Mr. Shebel, and we're headed with these rates. Mr. Popovich?
No, I agree with Mr. Shebel as far as trying to kind of balance out the debt ratios and et cetera. It kind of keeps your utility fund at a even cost to benefit ratio type scenario. So I don't have a problem with that. And I think that as we grow our facilities, we'll be able to maybe stabilize some of this and not have to go through these jumps.
That's correct.
Okay. Mr. Akers?
Well, I thought I heard tonight, maybe I did not hear one of the people that spoke, public hearing, that we were the highest availability for sewer and water in the state. But looking at the schedule, we're far from being the highest
Right.
in the state.
And all this data, there's other utilities that are out there. This data was pulled from the Draper 8 and 2010 report. They do an annual report of rates, and typically when we present to the board, we use that information. I should have noted that on here, but all this information was pulled from that report.
Okay. But I also see that we talk about the water cost availability fee for Stafford County, but we did not go over to the wastewater. I do not find Stafford County on the wastewater sheet. Is there some reason we didn't put it on put it under the wastewater?
I don't have my actual spreadsheet of everything. When I was going through, I was trying to find utilities that had amounts similar to ours. It could have been that it was a very low rate and could have been below the 7,000, and it just fell below the cutoff. Is why they might not be shown on that list. As I was going through that list, once you got below the 7,140, I just dropped the utilities that were below that.
Okay.
So I would assume by looking at this that was why they're not on that list. I can get you that number if you would like that.
You know, I think it's good that we compare ourselves with the people that are
Yeah, and I tried.
closest to us as we can get.
Yes, sir.
But,
And I used Hanover, Spotsylvania, Stafford,
Right, I
trying to
see
show their numbers in there, as well as King George, Orange, and then trying to stick with localities that are a similar of size and as far as the number of customers, because it really does make a difference on your customer base. You know, we don't have enough customer base to be able to spread our debt onto them.
We have the smallest, well, not quite. The town of Louisa has a smaller customer base in water than what we do.
I believe one had 31 customers, I believe, somewhere.
Down has 38.
There you go, 38.
But they have a pretty high
They do.
availability rate in wastewater as well. That's all, Mr. Chairman. Pardon?
Where's Hamilton?
Hamilton is up in sort of the Fauquier area. It's in that Fauquier area.
So that would explain that.
I have no questions or comments at this time.
Okay, Mr. Vice Chairman?
I know we talked about this when we talked about the wastewater treatment plant expansion, and I know for you, Mr. Shebo, is probably not what you have to put in there, but I think the board is, are we as a board going to say that these additional fees collected will go directly to debt retirement, or?
Oh, certainly. Yeah, this has got to be debt retirement.
That's what I thought most of the board was saying that. Do we need to formally say that in this?
That was discussed between staff and the finance director, and all of our funds currently with collecting availability fees do go to debt service. And that's what that money is for debt service, and that's all the money. There was a discussion from the board that we're going to tag a certain amount towards debt service, but all the availability fee is debt service.
I think that is important, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Vice Chairman, is the fact that, the fact is, the sewer system at this point, with the current rates, not the proposed rates, because the proposed rates will take care of the expansion that we talked about, but it is taking care of the debt retirement for the water and sewer system at this point.
Again, that does depend on the connections.
I understand.
You know, as Mr. Seal had pointed, we're at 11.5 connections so far for the fiscal year, and we're projecting 75 in our budget, and we're trying to project forward for this year. As long as we're meeting those projected numbers, then we'll be able to pay that debt. Where it comes in effect is when we get 2 years out and have to start paying back the debt on the new wastewater treatment plant, is rarely where we start seeing those numbers decline for about a 10-year period, and before they pick back up.
Now,
Do what now?
The numbers of us having to pay back, not being able to break even, you know, we're coming close during that time,
Well, we
and it
didn't
depends
do
on
this
the
type of
connections. Now, you add this into that calculation, and it changes that, and it looks.
Absolutely, because we had
absolutely.
only talked about the current rates.
That's correct. And that was one of the reasons why the board wanted to look at this, is to help pick up that 10-year gap before we start putting that money in there. I believe on the rate sheet, it was 2030, 2031. There ends up being about $5 million in the bank at that point, which, of course, we're going to have to start investing into upgrading for the future facility to go to a 3 MGD facility.
But
Well-
again,
Mr. Chairman, I would also add that as we meet our projections, that will create a reserve that we'll be able to fall back on to meet that
Right.
debt service
Well,
throughout what is considered a year or two in which the projections are not supposed to be there. So
okay. What my point is, I guess, for Mr. Shebel, and they talked about it at the staff level, staff and probably the board understands that these fees are for debt service. But unless we put something on this spreadsheet or on whatever is going on the county website, other people may not know that. So, I mean, while it's assumed for us, maybe we should just include that to make sure other people who read this would know that's what it's for. Okay.
So
Mr.
all
Rogers,
the-
good to see you, sir.
Good evening. Could I make a suggestion? One of the things that Ms. Hatcher and I have talked about is putting some fiscal policies and updating the fiscal policies that we have. One of the things that we want to do, we don't have currently that I'm aware of any utility fiscal policies. And that might be a good fiscal policy that it's not set in stone because we don't want to completely tie our hands, but something that would guide the board in its decision-making during budget times. The other thing to keep in mind is, and Mr. Shebel and I are going to sit down next week and start looking at where we are rate-wise as we start looking to budget 2012 to make sure that we are, as we've been saying, self-supporting revenues coming in on operations for the expenditures going out away from debt service. As long as we keep that balance, then any excess money would go toward, from connection fees, would go for debt service. To the extent we have more, then we would set it aside in a fund, within the fund, so that if there's a bad year and we're low, we can pull
Right.
out of there.
And that's kind of, all right, that's kind of the guideline that I'm looking for, I guess, as opposed to a policy we'd have to stick to, but a guideline so everybody understands what this rate increase is doing and why we're doing it. Okay. Thank you, sir.
All right, thank you, Mr. Vice Chair and Mr. Shebel. Some board members interested in moving this forward for the second reading?
Yeah. Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we move forward to second reading.
December 7th, public hearing.
second,
All right, motion made, proper second, move for December 7th meeting for a second reading. All those in favor say aye.
aye.
Aye, opposed, same.
And that's also a public hearing as well.
Public hearing.
Yes,
Yeah, the second reading would be a public hearing. Thank you, Mr. Ashcraft. All right, item number 10, the discussion of school-related issues, proposed submittal of application for qualified school construction bonds. Dr. Killo, you going to present this item?
Good evening. We have the school board on last board meeting approved a request for three, I guess, grants? Applications for grants. One for $9 million for combining Bowling Green Elementary School, making it a combined PK5 school. One for $5.75 million for renovations at the high school, and another one for $3.75 million for the HVAC upgrades at the high school. This money is the same as what we had talked about in the past. This money is basically interest-free. It's what the governor put out, and we have to put in these applications by the 19th in order to get them approved. And as I shared, the school board approved them at their board meeting last Monday, a week ago. If you have any questions, I have Randy Jones here, the architect that has helped us work with those, and pretty much the plans that you've seen submitted on the schools are the ones that we're taking forward. We stand a real good chance at getting at least one of these.
Okay. And I guess the timeline on this is has to be decided very soon.
Well, we have to submit the applications by the 19th, and then we're hoping that there's going to be quick turnaround time and then it would still require one more approval after that, is that correct?
That's correct.
Right.